So after visiting Paramount Studios, we decided we had some free time and we're going to come over here to the Hollywood Museum and check out the memorabilia that they have. What are you looking for?
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future stuff. So hopefully they have it. Okay, so I've never been here, so I don't know what to expect, but it should be interesting. In fact, the LA Weekly calls this the #1 Hollywood attraction. So let's go in and find out what we can find here. One of the first things that we saw was Wink Martindale's costume from the TV show Tic-Tac-Toe, that ran in the 1970s and 1980s. And one of the entrances has this beautiful statue, this bronze statue of Marilyn Monroe, the famous scene where the wind is blowing her skirt up. It was actually reproduced in the movie 7-Year Itch.
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
Sort of cools the ankles, doesn't it?
Now, this is a bra that Marilyn Monroe wore in How to Marry a Millionaire. The Playboy there, and she appeared on Time magazine. But yeah, had to be the biggest star in Hollywood. Here's some of her shoes and some of her memorabilia. This is the ring that she wore in the film Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Not only did this ring represent a major plot point, but Marilyn Monroe wore this ring throughout the 1953 film. Another piece of jewelry and some of her gloves. So when Marilyn Monroe died, Americans were really shocked. She was only 36 years of age, but she allegedly overdosed in her home on August 4th, 1962. And this museum has a photo of the bedroom as seen when she passed away, along with an inset of the housekeeper Eunice Murray, who was staying overnight when she discovered the body. This is one of her prescription medicine bottles from Schwab's pharmacy, but I don't think it's involved in her death. There were a bunch of empty medicine bottles found next to her bed. And this is a copy of the coroner's report showing that she died of acute barbiturate poisoning. She died in Brentwood, California. A lot of Marilyn Monroe memorabilia, including her hairbrushes. And here's some lipstick, and I see a bunch of matchbook covers from various hotels, such as the Beverly Hills Hotel, where she liked to hang out. Now this is pretty cool, a 1949 RCA television with a 10-inch mahogany console. It is still working. These two beautiful Emmy statues that went to Lucille Ball for the I Love Lucy TV series are generously placed here on loan by the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Another case has 3 more of the Emmys that she received for that television series. Probably the most famous pair of shoes in the world are the ruby red slippers that Judy Garland wore in Wizard of Oz.
Give me back my slippers. I'm the only one that knows how to use them.
Now, there were several pairs of slippers that were constructed for the film in sizes 5 and 6, and there are 5 pairs that exist today, 4 virtually identical pairs and 1 test pair. Certainly a lot of jewelry from Lucille Ball. This was worn by Rita Hayworth in Scenes from Gilda. And this is a picture of her. Pearl earrings that were worn by Elizabeth Taylor on the cover of a Screen Stories magazine in promotion of the 1954 film Elephant Walk. This brooch and earrings shown here on Elizabeth Taylor in Poker Alice 1987, also worn in Queen Charlotte. As an autograph collector, I was kind of thrilled to see this. These were matted signatures from the film The Plainsman, including Gary Cooper, Cecil B. DeMille, and others. There's also an ensemble of Gone with the Wind signatures. I see Clark Gable, Vivian Leigh, Olivia de Havilland, Ann Rutherford, Cliff Edwards, and Hattie McDaniel. Those are cool autographs. Lucille Ball's signature is also on display matted. It looks like it's a little bit age-toned. Hideous masks from the Planet of the Apes. Boy, they're ugly and they're falling apart, aren't they? This is a uniform that George Clooney wore in the 1999 film Three Kings. And as you can see, it's like a desert camo type outfit. I was a little amused to see this movie clip going from a Star Trek film shot in Yosemite National Park. Made it look like William Shatner was climbing up one of the cliffs, and it was really climbing just off of a set off the ground. Now, Our Gang was a Hal Roach comedy, and you probably know the popularity of these little cute kids back in the 1930s. This is an actual costume worn by members, including Darla Hood.
I'll see you fellas later.
I made it especially for you. Do you know why?
Why?
Because you have personality.
Have I?
Mm-hmm.
A number of still photos: Miriam Hopkins, John Wayne, Natalie Wood, Tony Curtis, Betty Davis, or Janet Leigh, Ann Baxter, Clara Bow, Gary Cooper, Victor Moore, Heather Angel, Charles Lawton. These are cool. This is a hideous looking thing from the V-TV series in the 1980s. And you Rocky fans will definitely recognize this boxing robe worn by Sylvester Stallone in Rocky. Very popular film way back. I wasn't into sports films, but I know a lot of people were. I was fascinated to see this as an actual gown that Jane Mansfield wore when she accepted the Laurel Award in 1959. She was nominated as the top female musical performance in The Girl Can't Help It in 1956. This gown was designed by Mr. Blackwell, a famous Hollywood dress designer.
Would you be so kind to let us hear it, the squeal?
Oui. I think it goes something like...
Could you try once more?
Shirley Temple's costume from Curly Top, 1935. Wow. Look at how old that is.
I don't know what this hideous looking thing is, but I thought it was interesting.
What is that?
Part of the original Hollywood sign before it was replaced in '78.
Look like bullet holes in it.
On display here is an original piece of the Hollywoodland sign, being the H, before it was reconstructed in 1978. The actual chair that Scarlett O'Hara sat in Gone with the Wind. Of course, actress Vivien Leigh appeared as Scarlett O'Hara. Very ornate furniture that I think anybody would love to have. These are some pretty hideous looking bunny legs from Along Came Polly. It was a scene in that movie. Of course, there's Jaws that turned 50 years old this year. Okay, so I grew up in the 70s, so I remember Mason Reese. He was in a bunch of TV commercials, a cute little kid.
The other morning I had a talk with Mom. Lunches were getting pretty boring, so I told her about our new chicken spread. Now look what she does with our sandwiches. Cranberry sauce and lettuce on chicken spread. Chunky peanut butter and applesauce on this one. Even made a nifty stuffed tomato salad, like I told her. Mom, you plus Underwood is like having a burgerschmord.
This is a top hat that he wore that actually belonged to Alice Cooper. A little bit of Mickey Mouse Club memorabilia, and then on top is a bunch of Waltons TV show memorabilia. lunch pails and photos. I actually got to meet most of the living cast the following month at the Hollywood show, and I posed for this picture. They included Mary Ellen, John Boy, the mother, Elizabeth, Jim Bob, Ben, and then myself in the middle. I thought this was a pretty cool item. It's Bob Hope's makeup kit, and it looks like he's like to slap on labels on top of it wherever he went. Yes, Bob Hope wore makeup, if you can believe that. The Beverly Hillbillies is still a favorite classic rerun show. This is Jed Clampett's hat and Granny's hat. Of course, Jed Clampett was played by Buddy Ebsen, and Granny was played by Irene Ryan. And a show that I was really big on, Dragnet, featuring Jack Webb and Harry Morgan. This is an actual badge from that TV series. The 1985 script for The Golden Girls, signed by all 4 of the major players. Back to the Future fans, you're going to love this one. An actual costume worn by Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly in Back to the Future. Such an iconic picture and such an iconic outfit. And who can forget this bomb dress worn by Leah Thompson in the film Back to the Future? Of course, her date that night was Crispin Glover, so Crispin Glover touched this as well. I tell you what, it's like drinking from a fire hose in this place. Just too much to take in. I mean, one exhibit itself could be a museum piece, but unbelievable Hollywood history right here. I have never seen such a collection of Roy Rogers memorabilia, and it's possible that it came from his museum that closed down in Branson recently, but lots of costumes here. Look at this memorabilia. Kids' shoes, toys, records, record players, fake guns, fake lanterns, toys. Wow, it's just an amazing collection of Roy Rogers books, gloves. Probably one of the most marketed Western actors in our history of film and TV. Signed magazines, signed comic books, and some not signed. Of course, some books the kids read, paint set, lunch boxes, toys. Just look at that camera too. Wow. That's amazing. The King and Queen of the Cowboys, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. These are outfits they also wore, including their cowboy hats. It's certainly fashionable to wear scarves back in the day. This one's blue. And look at the striped pants. Typical of the Western actors back then, and his boots as well. That is amazing. In 1956, Dale Evans and Roy Rogers appeared on the Perry Como TV show, and these are costumes that they wore on that particular episode. Lots of records, magazines. It was just about on the cover of every magazine. I thought this was a very cool letter that Eisenhower wrote to Roy Rogers, thanking him for agreeing to show up to his grandson David's birthday party on Saturday. Who's going to tell the president no? Now, you probably recognize this sweater. Jeff Bridges wore it in the Big Lebowski, big bowling film. Obviously, some movie props from the 1994 film The Flintstones. I can't believe it's been since 1994, but it starred John Goodman. It's a very interesting film. Costumes as well. This is a blouse that was worn by Doris Roberts. Of course, she was one of the actors in the TV series Everybody Loves Raymond. Now, these are the dog tags and the uniform worn by Loretta Swit in MASH, and she died after I videotaped this particular visit. She is standing right next to Bob Barker. Bob Barker was a huge TV personality for decades, and this is one of the costumes that he wore on The Price is Right. And a bunch of other costumes in the back. Phyllis Diller's, Bob Hope's, looks like Yvonne Craig's Batgirl outfit. And looks like Adam West here is Batman. The kid in me really wants to have that costume. That's exactly the way I remember Batman in the 1960s. I was enthralled with Batman when I was a kid. And look at this original Robin costume as well. Wow, big R in his chest. That is so iconic. And of course the Bat phone, signed by Adam West and Burt Ward as Robin. Wow, the Bat phone was crazy. And I also see some costumes in the back that were worn by the three actresses that I remember from Knots Landing. In fact, I met all three of them at a recent Hollywood show. Carol Burnett costumes. She was another iconic TV personality for decades. Laverne and Shirley costumes. And looks like Sonny and Cher stuff. And then we're going over to... Johnny Whitaker wore that in All in the Family. And who could forget Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, wearing that amazing costume. She was some hot property, wasn't she? This is funny because the skipper from Gilligan's Island met Lucy in an episode of Here's Lucy. Wow. And then this is the costume that she was wearing in that particular scene. Bob Denver's iconic Gilligan suit. Oh my gosh. And then Marianne wore that simple farm dress. She was a farm girl from Kansas, sweet and innocent. A lot of people were asked, Marianne or Ginger? And I said Marianne. I Dream of Jeannie. Such memories in that show. And look, there is the actual Genie bottle that they used. Probably just one of the props that they used. But I used to think, you rub that and she pops out of the bottle and grants you your wishes. I mean, total fantasy stuff. Here's one of the Superman costumes worn by none other than Christopher Reeve. To me, he is Superman. Of course, he left us way too early. And here is Herbie from Herbie Fully Loaded, a 2005 picture. Herbie the beloved 1963 Volkswagen Beetle made his return in this film. And who could forget the Scooby Doo Mystery Machine? This was in the 2002 Scooby Doo live-action movie. It was created from a 1960s to 1970s Chevy G-Series van. The designer stayed true to the iconic animated design while adapting it for the real world. This van features bold blue paint with green and orange flower patterns, reflecting the hippie-inspired look from the original series. This was a movie prop from the same movie, 2002. It was a ceramic tiki mug. Robert Guillaume was in the Phantom of the Opera, and this is one of the original face masks that he wore. Now note the mask is cracked at the bridge of the nose. Growing up in the 70s, Friday nights were special because it was the Dukes of Hazzard night. Ran from 1979 to 1985. This is one of the iconic orange 1969 Dodge Chargers that was a star in the CBS TV show. It was the primary mode of transportation for cousins Bo and Luke Duke, and it was known for its high-speed chases and dramatic jumps. It generally is itself a legend. And look at this, some of the costumes of the three main characters from the movie, Bo, Luke, and Daisy Duke. One of her halter tops. Probably one of the hottest TV women that I've seen.
Looky here, looky, what do we got here? Are you having trouble, little lady?
Yeah. I'm having a picnic. Which way to the beach?
And this is one of the deputy outfits, and it looks like a lot of the cast has signed this, and I can make out a couple of the names. Signatures of James Best, who played Roscoe B. Coltrane. Cuckoo. There was Catherine Bach, who played Daisy Duke, and then I see the signature of Tom Wopat, who played Luke Duke, and underneath that I see the signature of John Snyder, who played Bo Duke, and then on the other side of the shirt, I see that Sonny Schroyer, who played Deputy Enos, has signed on top, and then below, Rick Hurst, who of course played as Cletus. Handwritten lyrics to the song by Tom Wopat, Just the Good Old Boys, Never Meaning No Harm. Beats All You Ever Saw, been in trouble with the law since the day they were born. And it's also sung by Catherine Bach and John Snyder. Bo Duke. Here's some of John Schneider's cowboy boots that were worn in the TV series that his mother had him bronzed. These are collectible replicas of the belts and buckles that were worn by the characters of Bo, Luke, and Daisy Duke on the TV show. Mary Pickford, of course, was a huge Hollywood star in the days of, when we had movies that you didn't have sound. This is one of her dresses that were probably worn in a film. Here's some memorabilia from her husband, Charles Buddy Rogers, who was the star of Wings in 1927. It was a film starring Clara Bow. Now check out this model of one of the first motion picture studios. It was presented to Mary Pickford in 1951. One of the first Hollywood sex symbols was Rudolph Valentino, and of course we see a quote here. Betty Davis recalled a whole generation of females wanted to ride off into a sandy paradise with him. This is one of his sequined costumes, and I don't know, but I suspect it's from his movie as The Sheik. You can tell it's certainly old, but it's held up, I guess, over time. Wow, what a piece of Hollywood memorabilia. Anna May Wong was certainly a Hollywood legend. In fact, she's on a U.S. postage stamp now, and this is one of her orange oriental costumes. Check out this very old costume worn by Ramon Navarro in Ben-Hur, 1925 film. Well, it looks like it's kind of worn a little bit, but hey, it's 100 years old this year. That's incredible. Ben-Hur poster. It was a huge film back in the day.
Well, here's our friends from It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Jonathan Winters, Sid Caesar, Mickey Rooney, and I'm having a momentary loss for a name. I'm guessing that's Milton Berle, but it doesn't look like him.
Now, you fans of Harry Potter will definitely recognize this. It's from the movie Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Of course, Daniel Radcliffe wore this costume, and it's definitely iconic. Now, if you remember the Pointer Sisters, this was one of their costumes that they wore. The Pointer Sisters were big in the 1980s, I would say. I certainly remember them. This was a concert wardrobe. And who could forget Whitney Houston? This was the actual People's Choice Award given to her in 1988 as the favorite female musical performer. One of Pearl Bailey's personal handbags. She was a pretty big singer back in the 1940s and 50s. Of course, if you watched TV in the 1970s like I did, you will certainly recognize this cute little guy. It's Rodney Allen Rippey. He appeared in a lot of Jack in the Box commercials, and I remember how he used to say the word tomato, but he'd say it Schmader.
Hi, I'm Rodney Allen Rippey. There's a lot of things you can eat at Jack in the Box. This is a Jack steak sandwich, and these are pretty delicious too. And this is a taco. This is an onion ring. There might be 10,000 things at Jack in the Box. Pack up the kids, crank up the car to Jack in the Box. Come as you like, come as you are to Jack in the Box.
So what we have here is 3 costumes from the Magnificent Seven, left to right, something worn by Denzel Washington, and then Haley Bennett, and then Christopher Pratt. Huge Western film, The Magnificent Seven. This is one of the costumes that was worn by Eartha Kitt in the good old days. It was a BBC program, and she performed throughout the years on BBC in London. This is about 1970. Of course, in the 1980s, we had different strokes, and there's a lot of memorabilia here, including some costumes. Of course, these costumes were worn by Gary Coleman, Todd Bridges, and we've got some memorabilia. It was certainly a groundbreaking program because it showed a white man raising 2 black boys in addition to a white girl.
Different strokes it takes, different strokes to move the world. Different strokes it takes, different strokes it takes.
Here's Roddy McDowell's costume from Lassie Come Home 1943. And also starring in that film was Elizabeth Taylor.
So it looks like Roddy was also an autograph collector. This one from Stan Laurel. And then we've got this picture signed, inscribed by Elizabeth Taylor to him. A number of actresses have played the Catwoman, and these are costumes worn by the different actresses, and Michelle Pfeiffer on the left and Julie Newmar on the right. And then we've got Lee Merriweather down here, relaxing, very lifelike looking, I think. These models look very much like the originals. Of course, Lee Merriweather was in the 60s, and this is a really neat display here. And there's Eartha Kitt. She also played in the TV series Batman that I saw in the 60s. And then there's Anne Hathaway, played a Catwoman in a later film. Very realistic looking models that they have here, I think. Lee Merriweather looking very, very serene. She was actually, I think, Miss America at one time. But yeah, a neat collection here. And then there's these things, but Julie Newmar in 1966 said, "If I were to kiss you, would you think I was a bad girl?" And then from Batman the movie 1966, Lee Merriweather was quoted as saying, "You're going to see the perfect crime when I get Batman in my claws." Eartha Kitt in Batman says, "Get in this car or I'll blow whatever little brains you have out. I'm not just pussyfooting around this time, Batman." In the 1992 film Batman Returns, Michelle Pfeiffer says, "As I was saying, I'm a woman and I can't be taken for granted. Life's a bitch, now so am I." Halle Berry's quote from the 2004 film, "Meow, White Russian, no ice, no vodka, hold the Kahlua. Do you like bad girls?" And then in the 2012 film The Dark Knight Rises, Anne Hathaway said, "My mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men. A girl's got to eat, and I've got quite an appetite." So the museum also has a second set of costumes by Burt Ward and Adam West, and they're from the iconic TV series that I grew up watching. These really bring back a lot of memories for me. My grandmother made me a cape when I was a kid, and she told me that I would be able to fly if I wore it. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't fly, but good memories of that time in my life. Coming down the stairwell, we see a bunch of Western posters. I think some of them are really cool. You just don't see those anymore like this. But they're so iconic from that era. State Fair. Wow. We're going down to the basement where there's some pretty scary things associated with some of the horror films in Hollywood. I confess that I don't watch a lot of horror movies because they just don't appeal to me, but I do remember seeing this one. Pennywise used to live in the gutter with a red balloon. And I believe this is Vampira. Of course, we all remember who this lady was. Cassandra Peterson played Elvira. She's popping out there, isn't she? This is a costume from Jason Goes to Hell, Final Friday, 1993. Glad to say I didn't see it. I don't know who this guy is or what he pretends to be, but he's playing the organ with a bunch of skulls there inspiring him. Of course, King Kong, 1933. I don't know if these are toys or what these are, but they're obviously modeled after King Kong. Then we have Johnny Depp's costume from Sweeney Todd, a 2007 film. Johnny Depp being probably the biggest star in Hollywood today. A dog from The Sandlot. Again, I don't know if that was actual prop or if it's a toy or what, but look at that hideous looking thing. Jeez. This is a prop from the 1995 film The Dead Presidents. Again, a film that I haven't watched. I don't like these kind of movies. Bunch of plaster masks here made from the faces of various movie stars that played horror roles. This one, Vincent Price. This one of Peter Lorre, who died in 1964. It's cool that we can see exactly what his face looked like these many years later. Bela Lugosi, who played Dracula. We visited his grave in one of our videos. And here's a face mask for Christopher Lee. These plaster masks were made from their actual faces. Boris Karloff, legendary Frankenstein actor. There's a plaster mask of him with his eyes closed. Looks like he's asleep.
So when you're in Hollywood, you have to wear sunglasses, right? We are headed over to Chinese theater. It used to be Grauman's, but now they call it Mann's Chinese Theater. Tradition was for movie stars to put their feet, handprints, and their signatures in cement. You may remember that there was an episode of I Love Lucy where Lucy and Ethel were trying to take the slab signed by John Wayne. I'm going the wrong way.
Welcome to the guest house here at the historic TCL Chinese Theater, where hoodies are only $9.99. That's right, hoodies and sweatshirts for only $9.99. This
Annie Davis. Got to put my hand where Jimmy Durante was.
Can we find C-3PO stamps? R2-D2.
Here's Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Looks like Roy put his gun in there, but let's see. It looked like he had small feet, for crying out loud. Ah, look at that. Oh, wow. Here's my favorite Hollywood actor. Said I got here at last, Gary Cooper. And look, we're gonna put our hand right where he put his. I think his hand was a lot bigger than mine. Oh, here's the coveted John Wayne. Look at that. 1950. Like he put his fist in there. Check it out. Jackie Cooper's signature looks a lot like Gary Cooper's. Patrick Stewart. Let's see if our feet match up. Ethan Hawke. Billy Crystal. So I just bought a signed book that belonged to Tom Mix, and here's his signature in cement. Tony's Hoofprints 2, 1927. Of course, he died in 1940 in a car accident.
Howdy, folks. You know, Tony and I is having a great time making this cereal, and it's the best cereal that you've ever seen. It's called the Miracle Rider. And believe me, it's a miracle picture, isn't it, Tony? I'd like to stay here all afternoon, but I've got a lot of stunts to do today, and I'm late now.
Brad Pitt, BP, that's how he signed his signature.
Matt Damon. Standing up.
There's Bob Hope. I held the door open for Bob Hope when he came to Modesto. This was done in, I don't know, it's hard to read. Judy, Cary Grant.
I'll say Hollywood or Los Angeles. No, take a look. It's pretty good.
There. Jimmy Stewart's behind.
Okay, gotta do a hand comparison on Jimmy Stewart. Oh, about the same size. Margaret O'Brien, 1946. I met her at the Hollywood Show. Check out my video on the Hollywood Show. And right above her is Gene Autry. Alan Ladd. Danny Kaye. Kevin Costner. Kim Novak. Jerry Lewis. Ben Stiller. Sadly, this is a loss we had too soon. Kobe Bryant. His hands, looks like a lot of people have touched it because it looks oily. Of course, his shoes are big. I don't know. Not that much bigger than mine. Oh my gosh, there's Jean Harlow. Wow. Hollywood legend. Died way before her time. I think she was 24. She died. Not long after this. Look how little her feet are. Holy cow, look at this. Tiny, tiny hands. Oh gosh. Red Skelton. Gee. Susan Hayward. Wow. I gotta tell you, this is just an incredible collection. As an autograph collector, I'm just wowed by the fact that there's all these autographs in cement that have lasted for decades. So here's your Star Wars section. 1977, right after the film came out. It looks like R2-D2 has put his, I don't know what you call them, wheel prints. Anthony Daniels was here as C-3PO. And then Darth Vader. Harrison Ford's next to it. Took Harrison Ford a while, 1992. And then if we come straight up here, where all these tourists are, Clint Eastwood. Go ahead, make my day. Do you want to compare?
Huh?
You want to compare?
Two?
Here's the famous Sonia Henne. She was an ice skater back during World War II. Oh, look, she put her skate prints in it in 1937. Tyrone Power, another legend who left us way too soon. And then right above him was Harold Lloyd, silent film star. My best wishes always to Sid. And he drew his glasses. Hand and feet prints of H.L. Harold Lloyd, 1927. Holy cow. And then right next to it is this plaque celebrating Mervyn Leroy, which I also visited his grave. And if you want to check out that video, I'll provide a link to it as well. Cher, as you can tell, they're out of order. Not sure why they're so out of order, because up here we've got Sandra Bullock. We've got Jackie Chan, and then we've got Dwayne Johnson. All right, let's test this out. Look at this. The guy's got huge hands. Sean Connery. Robert De Niro. And then we've got Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, wow. Well, look at this. Sadly, this is Lisa Marie Presley's signature and handprints, and her son, Benjamin Presley Keogh. Both passed away, very young ages, and they're both buried at the Graceland Cemetery next to Elvis Presley. But there's also some Presleys here. Riley. Oh man, we can't forget about Clark Gable, for crying out loud. Look at this, 1937. That was before he did The Gone with the Wind. Wow. Jeff Bridges, look, he drew the Big Lebowski right there. 2017. Hollywood certainly is all about movies, stars, riches, glamour, fame. A lot of people just never make it, unfortunately. A lot of broken dreams here in Hollywood. Well, I hope that you enjoyed our little tour of Hollywood, California, and Paramount Studios. A bunch of kids here making a lot of noise. Love to hear your comment about what you saw today. Who's your favorite star? Gary Cooper and John Wayne were mine. Gosh, it's loud here. Thanks for watching.